Welcome to Omas True Stories. Today's story is that of Omas, the man whose age goes up and down. Weird, right? Well, let's delve into it now. I promise you will enjoy it. In a quiet village, nestled between rolling hills and sprawling fields, lived Omas, a man unlike any other. While his peers had grown frail with age, their faces weathered by the passage of time, Omas appeared as youthful as ever. He was, by all appearances, a strikingly handsome young man in his 20s, with smooth skin, a full head of dark hair, and the energy of someone at the prime of life. But beneath the surface, Omas held a secret that only he knew: he was not truly young. He was 90 years old. Omas's life was marked by a peculiar curse, one that allowed him to remain youthful during the day but forced him to revert to his true age as night fell. The villagers marveled at his appearance, unaware of the torment he faced each evening as his body transformed back into that of a frail, elderly man. No one saw this change, for Omas lived alone, and by nightfall, he locked himself away in his small, humble home. The curse had been with Omas for as long as he could remember. As a young man, he had made a desperate deal to preserve his youth, fearing the inevitability of time. But the deal had come at a great cost. Though he was spared the outward signs of aging, he was condemned to live two lives, one as the youthful man the village adored, and another as the old man whose body was rapidly deteriorating. One morning, Omas walked through the village, his youthful appearance drawing the admiring gazes of the villagers. Women whispered about his handsomeness, and men envied his apparent vigor. But as Omas made his way through the market square, where the villagers gathered to sell their goods, he felt a pang of loneliness. He knew that the admiration he received was based on an illusion, a fleeting gift of the curse that would soon fade with the setting sun. As the day wore on, Omas found himself in the company of some older villagers, men who had known him for decades. They laughed and shared stories of their youth, their wrinkled faces lit with nostalgia. Omas smiled and listened, but inside, he felt the weight of his secret. He stood tall among them, his posture straight and his skin unblemished, while they bore the marks of time. They had aged together, yet Omas had remained untouched by the years, a fact that filled him with sorrow rather than pride. Later, as Omas walked home along the narrow dirt road that led to his house, he felt the familiar ache of loneliness settle in his chest. The admiration he received in the village had become hollow to him, a reminder of the curse that kept him from living a normal life. As he reached his home, Omas sighed deeply, knowing that as night fell, his body would betray him once more, returning him to the frailty of his true age. Inside his house, Omas sat alone, the silence pressing in around him. He had no family, no close friends, for he had long since distanced himself from the people of the village. His secret was too great a burden to share, and he feared what others would think if they knew the truth. And so, Omas had resigned himself to a life of solitude, trapped in a cycle of youth and age that only he could understand. But everything changed the day the women of the village began to grow suspicious. The women, noticing Omas's strange habits and how he always disappeared before sunset, whispered about him. Their curiosity soon turned into suspicion, and one evening, a group of women decided to follow Omas to his home. What they discovered shocked them. They found Omas not as the youthful man they had seen during the day, but as an old, frail figure hunched over in his small house. His face was wrinkled, his hair gray, and his body weakened by age. Asens, one of the women who noticed this change, was struck by compassion for Omas. While others laughed at the discovery, Asens couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his story. She began visiting him regularly, bringing him food and offering her company, despite the fact that others mocked her for spending time with him. Asens' kindness was unwavering, even when they were seen walking together in the village, and some people laughed at the sight of her beside an old man. Omas, at first reluctant, eventually allowed Asens into his life. He grew fond of her visits, though he kept his secret guarded for some time. But Asens' persistence in asking why he was the way he was, and her genuine care for him, finally broke down his walls. One evening, after weeks of her kind inquiries, Ova decided to open up to her. He explained the curse that had plagued him for decades, the curse that allowed him to appear youthful during the day but forced him to become an old man at night. After revealing his secret, something changed. For a while, Ova stopped transforming into his youthful form during the day and remained in his elderly state for some time, day and night. Asens stayed by his side, walking with him through the village even when people stared or laughed. She did not care. Her feelings for him grew deeper, and though the sight of Ova as a frail old man pained her, she remained steadfast. Then, one morning, Ova woke up to find himself in his youthful form once again. Asens noticed it immediately. His skin had regained its smoothness, his posture was straight, and he looked like the handsome man she had first met. It seemed like the curse had reverted to its original state, allowing Ova to be young during the day and old at night. This change brought Asens immense joy, and the bond between them grew even stronger. They spent their days together, walking through the village. Some of the villagers laughed at them, especially Asens, wondering why such a beautiful girl will waste so much time with someone who they assume is cursed. But Asens didn't mind the tongue wagging and continued to be by his side as Ova appeared youthful and full of life, then reverses back to his elderly form at nightfall. For a brief period, life seemed to stabilize for Ova and Asens. They cherished the time they had during the day, and Asens was filled with hope that perhaps the curse had settled. But soon, a new transformation began. After Ova began reverting to his youthful self, both he and Asens were relieved. He seemed to have settled back into his original form, his 30-year-old self during the day and the frail, elderly man at night. For a time, life resumed with some semblance of normalcy. Asens was overjoyed, and their relationship deepened. The villagers were no longer laughing as they saw Ova back to his charming self, walking through the village with Asens by his side. It seemed as though the worst was behind them. But one evening, shortly after they shared an intimate moment, the course shifted once again. It started slowly at first. Ova woke up one morning, looking slightly younger than he usually did. He had the face of a 20-year-old man, and Asens couldn't help but be in awe of his youthful appearance. "You look so young," she said, tracing the smooth skin of his face. Ova smiled, but there was a sense of unease growing in his heart. This wasn't supposed to happen. He had returned to his normal youthful state, but this was different. At 20, Ova was still filled with the energy and vitality that had once captivated Asens. They spent their days laughing and walking through the village, his youthful presence making Asens feel as though they had all the time in the world. But Ova knew something was changing, even if he didn't speak it aloud. The nights were still the same, his body reverted back to that of an old man, frail and weak, but the daytime brought new changes. A few days passed, and Ova woke up looking younger still. His body now resembled that of a 16-year-old boy. Asens noticed the shift immediately. His face, once chiseled with the maturity of a man in his prime, now held the softness of youth. His laughter was lighter, his energy more restless. He was like a boy on the cusp of adulthood, full of excitement but lacking the calm wisdom that had defined him before. Asens' heart ached as she watched Ova grow younger. He no longer carried himself with the confidence of a man. Instead, his actions were impulsive, driven by youthful exuberance. He would run through the village, his once thoughtful demeanor replaced with playful abandon. And while Asens smiled at his antics, a growing worry gnawed at her. She saw the change but didn't know how to stop it. Then, one morning, Ova woke up as a 10-year-old boy. His face was round, his limbs thinner, and his voice high-pitched. Asens' breath caught in her throat as she looked at him. This was no longer the man she had fallen in love with, this was a child. The Ova she knew still lingered in his eyes, but the wisdom that once defined him was buried beneath a layer of childhood innocence. He looked up at Esin with wide, curious eyes, not fully understanding what was happening to him. Esin felt her heart break as she realized that Ova was slipping away from her. The days that followed were filled with moments of sadness as Esin adjusted to caring for him as a boy. She fed him, dressed him, and guided him through the village, her heart heavy with the knowledge that the curse was continuing its cruel work. The villagers stared as Esin walked with a child by her side, a boy who had once been a man. Ova, now a 10-year-old, still tried to communicate with Esin. He would ask her questions, his mind still sharp, but his body and voice betrayed his age. Esin listened patiently, tears welling in her eyes, knowing that the man she loved was still in there somewhere. But the transformation continued. A few days later, Ova became a 6-year-old child. He was now small, with chubby hands and a childlike voice that made Esin's heart ache. He no longer spoke with the clarity of a man who had lived many lives. Instead, his words were those of a child, filled with wonder and innocence. Esin held him close, knowing that the end was near. She took care of Ova with all the love and tenderness she could muster, treating him as though he were her own child. The man she had loved was now a helpless boy, and Esin's heart broke every time she looked at him. She knew that Ova's time was running out, and every day felt like a step closer to the inevitable. Finally, one morning, Ova transformed into a newborn baby. Esin woke up to find him lying peacefully in her arms, his tiny body curled against her chest. She cradled him close, her tears falling silently as she mourned the loss of the man she had loved. Ova's transformation had come full circle, and now, as an infant, he was completely dependent on her. Esin rocked him gently, knowing that the curse had taken everything from him. In the quiet morning light, Esin whispered to Ova, her voice trembling with emotion. "You'll never be alone," she said softly, holding him close. Ova, too young to understand, rested peacefully in her arms, his tiny fingers wrapped around hers. As the sun rose, he took his final breath, and the curse that had plagued him for so long was finally broken. Hope you enjoyed my story. Fix the moral. Okay. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to Omastruestories, comment, like and share. See you in our next drop. Bye for now.